guys, so something that I get asked a lot is if it's possible to get a job as a counsellor in this day and age, and why there are so many part-time jobs instead of full-time jobs. So in the first part of this video, I'm going to share some statistics about counselling job prospects in the UK so that you have a better idea of what to expect based on the information that's been out there in the past few years. And then in the second part of the video, we're going to do some job hunting. We're going to look at some job listings and see what's actually out there right now and see what we can find and go through those things together. I do have a part 1 and part 2 of videos where I'm job hunting for counselling jobs, which I'll have linked in the description box for you to watch after this video. So let's get started with the statistics. So starting with the NHS, in 2022, in a research survey, they found a shortage of 2,000 qualified therapists in the UK. Now this was in 2022, so now it's 3 years ago. And I feel like that number has probably increased significantly since then, especially because of the pandemic. All the links for the stats that I've mentioned will also be in the description box. Now, for the BACP, who hopefully you should know who they are by now, they also did some research and they found a 27% increase in membership to 66,000 since 2020, which means more people are getting qualified, and alongside this, people using the NHS increased by 25% to 4.5 million between 2017 and 2022. So once again, I'm sure the numbers are much higher now that we're in 2025. But these are the latest statistics that I could find. And there's also been an 80% increase in therapy-related jobs that have been posted online, according to Indeed.com, which is a job advertising website. And the last statistic that I'm going to share is that there was a 21.5% increase in the number of people accessing talking therapies, according to the NHS, between 2021 and 2022. Now, of course, some of this information is, a few years behind, but it takes a few years to collect this information. So the latest information, hopefully I'll be able to update you guys at some point soon. But from what you can see from these statistics, there's more job listings, there's more people accessing therapy, there's more people getting registered. But at the same time, a lot of counsellors and therapists are complaining that there's still not enough jobs, or there's not enough full-time jobs, and a lot of them are having to do 2 jobs, part-time and private therapy, or 2 part-time jobs. So there's still a bit of a dilemma, because we know that more people need therapy now, especially since the pandemic. And clearly, according to the statistics, there's more BACP memberships, and the same is probably true for other governing bodies. So is it still possible to get a job as a counsellor? Yes, clearly there's a need for more counsellors. But why is it that there's so many postings for part-time jobs? We'll see what that looks like a bit later on in the video. Now, unfortunately, on the job prospect side of things, the BACP did say that there's an increase in paid employment opportunities. However, there's not enough jobs for everyone who's professionally trained, and many roles are actually part-time or voluntary, and this is coming from the BACP, who are one of the governing bodies for counsellors and therapists in the UK. So they are actually saying, yes, they admit it, there's lots of part-time jobs and voluntary jobs, but not many full-time jobs. Now, from what I've seen, I think the reason for this is because a lot of the jobs being advertised require a lot of people to be accredited, and a lot of people to have maybe 2 or 3 years of experience post-qualification before they can get certain jobs, which means you can't just be a registered counsellor, but you have to be accredited, which I've done a video on the difference before, so if you want to watch that you also can. But there's a difference between accredited status and registered status, which means that although there may be a lot of newly qualified therapists, a lot of them are qualifying with maybe 100 hours, 200 hours, or somewhere around there, and they don't have the 450 hours which are accredited status. People who qualify with 450 hours are usually people who have done a PhD. So most people are not doing PhDs, of course. Most people are graduating with a diploma or a degree or a master's, all of which only require a maximum of 200 supervised client hours, whereas PhD level requires 450 supervised client hours. So when a lot of jobs are advertising for people to have accredited status, that means they're asking for people to have 450 hours, which most people will not have, myself included. So that's why then a lot of people either end up going straight into private practice, or they have to just do 2 part-time jobs, and as they do those jobs, then they can work their way up to accredited status to get the remaining maybe 350 hours or 250 hours that they need to be able to reach 450 hours to get to the accredited status. So what's the conclusion and what's the takeaway before we start job hunting together? Counselling jobs are on the rise because there's a need for them. People using therapy are on the rise. However, jobs are demanding counsellors who have more qualifications than what people actually get qualified for. So although there may be lots of people getting qualified, they're not qualifying at the level that jobs are looking for, which is really unfortunate, because I think if more jobs were open to accepting people who have a registered status rather than an accredited status, it would be very easy for counsellors to get jobs without having to work extra hard to get to the 450 hours. So when I'm qualified, I will be qualifying with just over 200 hours, and I'll still have to spend another year or two working my way up to get the other 250 hours to be able to reach accredited status. And even then, also speaking to some of my colleagues who've already started working in the field, a lot of them are going through something very similar. Some of them are trying to build up their private practice by getting more clients, but then they're also working on the side, maybe with other companies like BetterHelp or in another corporate company, to be able to make ends meet. And unfortunately, that has been the case for a lot of therapists that I've spoken to, other therapists that I've worked with when I did my placement. A lot of them were working part-time here, part-time there. And it takes a lot of time and effort to become accredited, but I would suggest and hope that once you get qualified, whether you're qualifying at diploma level or whether you're coming from master's level or degree level, the best bet for you, if you're not going straight into private practice, is to try and reach accredited status by building up your hours and reaching that 450 hours status. That would help you massively in terms of being able to find a job that's full-time. However, it's not the easiest thing to do. It might take a few years, because the same way it takes about 1 year to get the 100 hours, it might also take you a bit longer to get to accredited status. So I may do a video on what it takes to get accredited once I do a bit of research on it. So stay tuned for that as well. So for the next part of the video now, I'm going to put some job adverts on the screen and we're going to look through them together in terms of the salary, whether it's part-time, full-time, the qualifications that are asked for in the job description. And we're kind of just going to see what's out there right now in the market when you look for counselling jobs, when you look for psychotherapy jobs, and when you look for therapist jobs. So let's see. So I've got my laptop here with me. I'm going to be looking at the job listings from my laptop, but the screenshots are going to be right here. So we're going to go through the different jobs that I could find. And yeah, we're going to see what's out there at the moment, so you know what to expect when you start applying for jobs as well. So the first one is from Archer Resourcing. Now this one's based in Birmingham and it's a full-time position. So the main things I want to look at is the requirements and experience and things like that, and the pay, and whether it's full-time or part-time. But of course the job description helps as well, because as much as I would have expected that a lot of counselling jobs are literally just you doing admin and talking to your clients, some of these jobs add a little bit extra to the requirements. So I'm also going to go through that as briefly as I can as well. So in this one, let's skip down to the responsibilities include but are not limited to conducting counselling sessions virtually and in person, support clients of course, developing and implementing tailored treatment plans, that's expected, maintaining up-to-date records of things that you would do with your clients, blah blah blah, providing crisis intervention, working collaboratively with other mental health professionals, maintaining strict confidentiality. So all these are kind of baseline things that you'd be expected to do as a counsellor in general, so that's fine. So the requirements here are that you have a degree in counselling, psychology or related fields, you have accreditation or membership with a recognised body such as BCP, UKCP or equivalent. Now accreditation or membership then makes it a bit tricky, because then you could be accredited or registered, but hopefully they also accept registered membership. And if you've seen my previous videos, I think I've mentioned that I don't think some of these companies understand or know the difference between what accredited status is and what registered status is, and that's why maybe most of them just pick accredited because it's the highest, but they don't really know what the difference is and what it means in our field. So a minimum of 2 years of experience in a counselling role. So in a way that would almost kind of take you to accredited status. You don't have to work towards accredited status if you don't want to. You could be registered and stay registered for 2 years, get the experience and still apply for a job like this if you wanted to. But of course accreditation makes it that much easier, because that's the highest level that you can reach besides supervision. Of course experience in delivering both face-to-face and virtual therapy, blah blah blah. Familiarity with virtual counselling platforms and digital tools. So this might be a bit different, because some companies might have specific tools that they use. Of course you can learn on the job, so hopefully they would be okay with that as well. Client-centered approach. Let's see if there's a pay on here. There is no pay written on here, which is odd. Let's have a look. Must be eligible to work in the UK and a £250 referral bonus. So sometimes you see jobs like this and then they don't have the salary, which of course is very off-putting. So maybe somewhere in the application process, if I'd clicked on one of the options at the top here, maybe I would have been able to see the salary. But I always feel like jobs that hide the salary is either because it's too low for what they're asking, or maybe it's really high but they don't want too many people applying just because it's a high salary. But I'm more inclined to think it's because the salary is a bit on the lower end. So sometimes I guess when you see a job like this, it looks okay, and then you might see that the pay is like 27k or something, or 25k for a full-time job where you're doing all of this. It might not be worth it, but of course that's, you know, a personal choice. So the next one here that we've got is just a counsellor role, also in Birmingham, and this one is saying hybrid and full-time. This one is specifically for a domestic violence counsellor actually. So this one is 22.5 hours per week, a fixed term until 31st of March, and a possible extension. So this might be a maternity cover or something like that because it's quite temporary. Hours are typically 9 to 5 over 3 days, and an hourly rate of £15.92. I don't do quick maths, but do the calculations yourself and, you know, you can find out what it is. And if I can be bothered, I'll put the salary on the screen once I do the calculations off screen. They're saying that they're quite flexible and it's hybrid approach, mixing face-to-face and virtual sessions. Responsibilities are going to be counselling sessions, assessing client needs, providing crisis intervention, educating them, confidentiality, all of that kind of stuff. So this one is also kind of what you might expect to see, but in terms of what they actually are asking for in terms of qualifications, they didn't put that on here. So this might be something which is a bit easier to find once you actually start applying for the job. But it says here, to be successful you must have experience in the domestic violence field, an in-depth knowledge and experience of working with victims and survivors, the ability to assess and respond appropriately to risk, and happy to travel around Birmingham. So there's not much in terms of qualifications and requirements that are listed. But of course I'm sure if you've got experience that they need in domestic violence and the things that they've mentioned, and then whether you're accredited or registered, maybe they would still accept you. But yeah, this is also a kind of example of what you might come across. Some of them might not clearly state what qualifications or requirements they want you to have, but when it comes to areas of specialization, maybe trauma, domestic violence, sexual abuse, they will expect you to kind of have experience in those areas, addiction and so on and so forth. Regardless of whether you're accredited or registered, they'll want you to have that specific experience. So moving on to the next job, for this one I typed psychotherapist and this is what came up. I had to look around. So when I was looking for some of these jobs, it wasn't a case of I clicked on the first website that came. Some of them I had to go on multiple websites to find like a basic counselling job, because a lot of them were coming up with like occupational therapist or high intensity talk therapist, and it's like, no, I just wanted counsellor or just psychotherapist. So I had to scroll around a bit to get some of these. So in-person counsellor / psychotherapist, this one's on LinkedIn. This one is £30 an hour, part-time, full-time, 0-hour contract. Jobs like this also not very helpful because they also don't know what they want, and you don't want to apply for a job where they don't know what they want from you, because then you don't know what you're committing to or what you're signing up for. Of course in the interview process and stuff, like all of this will be clarified before you start the job, but it's also just nice to know that they know what they want from you and they're not just like trying to fit you in somewhere, and you're also not guaranteed what you want. It might be best to ask even before going to the interview, like what exactly are they looking for. So they're saying that you must have a BACP or BABCP registered, so you must be registered with one of the two. Full or provisional, meaning if you're going to be qualified soon but you're not qualified yet, you could apply for this. Me. They're saying registered, so which is good, you don't have to be accredited. So that means even if you're freshly qualified and you've just got your qualification like yesterday, you could apply for this job. So they want someone who's eager to learn and is flexible. So maybe that's where their full-time / part-time comes in. And so they want somebody who's qualified, who has experience working with adults, children and learning difficulties. Is desirable, that's not a must, but it's desirable. So this is also why I talked about in my placement video that it's good to try and have versatility in your placements and try to do different placements so you can pick up different types of experience. And they also want you to have a minimum of 200 face-to-face client hours. So that's master's level. Master's level requires you to do 200 hours face-to-face client hours. How However, actually some, like my master's, it wasn't full 200 hours face-to-face. You could do just under half virtual, but majority had to be face-to-face. So you could also have a degree in psychology or counselling, that's also desired. However, candidates without a degree or relevant experience will be also considered, which is nice. So they would want you to be qualified in basically all sorts of mental health issues: depression, anxiety, health anxiety, OCD, panic disorder, etc., etc. The list goes on. So I don't know where you're meant to get all of that experience from, but if you have it, that's great. If you don't, maybe they might still be willing to consider you. So applicants can engage with clients using evidence-based theoretical interventions, including CBT and counselling skills. I mean, yeah, counselling skills are a must for a counselling job. Yeah, so let's have a look. So it's £30 per hour. You get to work from home. So make of that what you will. This is quite interesting because once again the hours are not set and they're not clear. So yes, you might be getting £30 an hour, but there's not much else that's clear about it. So for the next job, I searched therapist jobs rather than counselling jobs. So this is an NHS job. It says £23.52 per hour, very specific. Temporary, and it's full-time. So this is in Redditch Town Hall. So this is face-to-face by the seams of it. And it's 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. You can do the maths, £23.52 for 8 hours a day, 5 times a week. So you'll be doing high intensity therapy treatment groups. So group therapy in a way it seems. So what you'll need is high intensity IAPT, postgraduate diploma, so masters, BAB CP registration, experience working with people with a variety of mental health presentations. So if you've done placement during your course, that more than suffices. Specialist mental health and psychological knowledge, blah 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 blah. So yes, most people could probably fit this criteria if they've had their masters and got their registration with the BAB CP. And there's a few benefits which are listed below. So that's what I found in terms of searching therapist jobs. Cognitive behavioural therapist came up with the NHS. And within the NHS there's countless CBT therapist job roles and therapist jobs in general. Within the NHS there's quite a lot of them. So I searched counsellor again because I was struggling to find therapist jobs and psychotherapist jobs. So I searched counsellor again and I found this one, which is another one by the NHS in Lancashire and South Cumbria. So this is a full-time qualified counsellor role. It says we're open to flexible and hybrid working requests, so that's good. You're working in a team, you'll have regular supervision, and you'll be required to attend training. So depending on qualifications, knowledge and skills, you'll be paid at a corresponding pay band. So this one, they're quite flexible in terms of pay because it's going to be dependent on your experience. So at least you get the chance to apply for the job. However, the pay may not be exactly what you might want depending on your experience. So the range is ridiculous, 37k to 52k per year, depending on experience and skills and qualifications. That's interesting. That's really interesting. But 37k, maybe starting out, might not be so bad. And obviously you could probably progress pretty quickly if you do some of the training that they offer. Band 6. So they say in addition to core training as a counsellor, you must have HE, Talking Therapies approved training qualification, and a whole bunch of other things. But if you haven't got your BACP accreditation, you must be committed to completion of this within the first 12 months of your post. So they expect you to also reach accreditation very quickly. So this one you probably might not be able to do as soon as you're qualified because accredited status takes maybe a year or two depending on how quickly you can get the other hours that you need. It might take a bit longer. And then in band 7, in addition to the above, you must be accredited with the BACP already and hold supervision qualification. Wow, they are strict. That's a lot. So the above accreditation level is supervision level. So for people who've been working in the industry long enough, they can work towards a qualification to be a supervisor for other therapists. So that's a higher qualification. Yeah, that's amazing. That's a lot. So it's full-time permanent, and I believe it was hybrid, but it doesn't say whether it's 9 to 5 or not. So these are the essential qualifications: BACP, accredited diploma, registration and accreditation, or working towards an accreditation within 1 year working there, and NHS Talking Therapies qualifications, which are all listed here. So there'll be a lot to do. Not only will you be doing the job itself, but you'll also be required to be doing quite a lot of training, and essential knowledge and skills that you need to have are all listed here. So that's what I found for this job role. So all in all, I guess you can see what kind of jobs are out there at the moment, and the market, I'm not gonna lie, doesn't look great. It doesn't. And although, like I said in one of the previous job hunting videos I did, the BACP does not recommend going into private practice, but it seems for most people that's probably the best option. Of course, your clientele is not going to be big straight away, but you might be able to do private practice and work for one of these companies part-time while building up your private clientele gradually until you're able to sustain yourself in private practice. Of course, there's other places to look. Schools are seeking counsellors, corporate organisations are looking for counsellors. Just because it's not there when you do a Google search doesn't mean that there's no jobs around. You can ask around and look on LinkedIn. You can ask people that you know, people who work in big companies, if their companies are hiring therapists or counsellors. And of course, hospitals, especially the NHS, will always have or will always be looking for counsellors and therapists. So not all hope is lost, but as you can see, some of them, the bar is really high to get the job accreditation status, and that's not possible when you're newly qualified unless you've just done a PhD. So not all hope is lost. However, try your best to reach accreditation level if you can. If not, you can just work at your level of registration and just try and build up your own clientele, which if you have a website, if you have a social media presence, if you have connections from your past placements, you can still manage to build up a clientele, and word of mouth as well. So it's still possible to thrive and to make a decent living as a counsellor doing that full time. It's not the end of the world, but of course, as you can see, this is just the reality of it. It's not great, but it's possible. So I will link the other 2 videos that I did where we were job hunting, so you can also look at those. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and to subscribe. Bye!